Good morning. Rise and shine. I say that every morning, don't I? I'm getting boring, but I think it's a great way to start the day. Rise and then shine the rest of the day. And today we're going to be shining particularly brightly due to a guest that we have who's going to describe today's program. And my friend Linda Tantawi is here to join us also because this is an important day. This is what we're calling Research Day, and we're going to do a deep dive into a wonderful program. And I'd like to welcome Josh Neman from USC Norris. He's a researcher, he's a neurologist. Welcome, Josh. And Linda, come and join me to help welcome Josh to Rise and Shine.
Good morning, Sharon.
Morning.
And hi, Dr. Neman. So glad you're here. We can't wait to hear everything you have to say.
Morning, Sharon and Linda. Yeah, thanks so much. I've been looking forward to this day. And I want to thank both of you for honestly making this month-long meeting happen. And I'm sure it has not been, easy task with everything going on and just the technology and, the hiccups, but I'm really looking forward to it. And, you guys are our champion.
Well, I have to really commend you. I know how hard programming and coordinating is, and the fact that you were able to coordinate this with some of the iconic metastatic breast cancer patient or researchers in the country, I'm in awe that you pulled us all together virtually as a one-man show. I mean, this is your conference inside the conference.
Very exciting.
Yeah, normally, I always look at, the pluses, rather than the negatives. Normally my colleagues and I would be all in one room in one conference hall, and it would be very seamless. We'd all fly from the different parts of the country where we're at. We've got folks from here on the West Coast all the way, on the East Coast, and so we'd all, be in the same, convention center, hotel, whatever. But the plus, that's the negative part, that we won't be there. But the plus is that I think, and I think that in the age of COVID, this is going to be the positive, is that these virtual conferences are now going to be accessible to so many more people.
Yes.
To those folks who could not fly because of medical reasons, because of financial reasons, right? And that's honestly, when Sharon and Linda, when we were talking, oh my goodness, I think over 2 months ago about this, that was the goal of today. It was the goal of just educating people, educating folks that could not, that would probably not have the opportunity to register for a conference. And my colleagues and I mean, it was, you said it would be hard. It was hard. All the folks that are going to be talking today, they jumped when I said this is going to be for patients, for their families. Usually it's harder to invite folks if it's another scientific meeting, if they're presenting to other physicians, to other scientists. They say, well, normally, I have this conflict or that conflict, but everybody just said yes right off the bat because they knew who the audience is going to be. And honestly, this is why we do what we do.
There was a side benefit that I saw happening in action, and I was so gratified to see a couple of your research scientists reach out to each other and say, hey, we should talk. You're doing this and I'm doing that, and we really should share our information or what it is that we're working on. I thought, this is wonderful. This is bringing together the community of the research scientists, and we're adding in the patient and the caregiver at the same time. And what a wonderful partnership we're able to create through this virtual environment. Now, we're calling this Research Day, and for a good reason. You've brought together a large number of researchers, and would you just explain a little bit your thinking behind how you selected them and why they're here, or in other words, what are they studying that's important for us to know about?
Sure. Yeah. So I, the way I think of, putting things together, it's just sort of like a builder, right? Like an architect, like an architect. And the way I designed or thought of the speakers, first of all of the speakers, they are, leading experts in their aspect of metastatic breast cancer or metastatic research.
Mhm.
And we have various topics and, speakers going through, but the way the day is built is, we have, so depending on where you are, I'm going to talk on West Coast time, right? So when we start at 10 o'clock, we have two sessions. So we have, session one, which runs roughly from 10 to 12, and then we have a short break, and then 12 to 2. And the buildup of that is, the first session is sort of, it'll start off with just very basics of metastasis. Dr. Danny Welch from Kansas is going to talk about that, and then I'm going to follow up with just bringing you folks, into the lab, and that's the other aspect of this, is that we, the 10 of us that are going to be speaking today, it wasn't the point of, standing up there and lecturing, and throwing big words. I made sure that, the goal of today's meeting is for you to understand what metastatic breast cancer is, how we research it, what is the latest. And so the buildup of it is, session one is going to be building up on metastasis, cells that are in liquid biopsy, proteins that are shed or, by tumor cells. So like, sort of like, if you think about, a flower that pollinates, that sends out cargo, that's going to be all within the realm of session one. And at the end of each session, we're going to have, I'll be moderating questions. We'll have a panel of the first set of speakers, and they'll be able to answer host of questions from the audience through the chat. Then session two is going to get all of it is advanced. Don't get me wrong. Session two is going to get a bit more uh, on the topic of clinical treatments, for example, immunotherapy, treatment resistance, of how cells go into hibernation. That's going to be, Dr. Sirius Glajar from Fred Hutch in Seattle. I'm going to go through immunotherapy with Dr. Priceman from City of Hope, who's done this conference with us several times now. And then the last, 2-3 presenters are going to talk about one of the most elusive sites for metastatic breast cancer, and that's going to be brain metastasis and different concepts. So Pat Stieg, she's at the NCI. She is one of my, not only mentors, but what I call her a shiro. And, she has been unbelievable force, and she's been the epitome of what a scientist who wants to take everything that they learn and they discover in the lab and take it to the clinic. She is that person. And she's one of the leaders at the NCI. And then we have a following with her is talking about clinical trials and the clinical trial concepts of what is coming up in the future, for with Dr. Carrie Anders of Duke. And then finally, last but certainly not least, we're going to be talking about something that, every cancer patient has probably gone through, and that is some cognitive issues, and so that's going to be led by Dr. Kathleen Van Dijk of UCLA. So the whole concept of this is sort of building on, every speaker builds on the other, and then you get this whole culmination going.
Mhm. Right, and you mentioned all their names, and also Dolores DeVizio.
Yeah. So the first, session.
What is extracellular vesicles?
Vesicles. Right. So extracellular vesicles, and I'm glad that you got that out such early in the morning. So the best way to describe it, and this is all very new concepts. So imagine that analogy that I told you, is that if you sit there, if you go into a flower field, correct? And we all have some sort of allergies, and we sneeze because of the pollen, right? Because flowers send out these, pollen. I mean, that's the easiest way to describe it. Well, tumor cells do the same thing. What we call, they shed these cargoes, or what's called extracellular vesicle. A vesicle is just basically, something like imagine a little bubble. And within that bubble, we're finding out that there is genetic code. So there is potentially DNA and RNA, and there's protein. And this is one way that tumor cells, they send out these cargoes. So if you think about FedEx, UPS, I love analogies. That's why I keep using them. And, they send out these cargoes, and you may say, well, why are they doing this? And it's because of a couple of reasons. So in the concept of metastasis, when tumor cells want to get up and leave, they'll send out these cargoes, because these cargoes will communicate with other cells in the body. So in the case of breast cancer cells that are in the breast will start sending out these pollen, throughout the blood vessels. And these pollens will go, let's say, to the liver, where, and bone, or the brain, where breast cancer goes most often. And they'll start communicating with those cells in those other organs. And those cells will sort of get tricked and say, hey, my buddy is getting ready to come. I'm going to prepare a house for it. And so this is one way that metastatic cancer, breast cancer, will trick the body. And that's called setting up a niche, so an environment or a community. So even before tumor cells get there, they're sending out information saying, hey, get ready, we're coming, and we're friends. So don't kick us out.
I live for your metaphors. It's the only way I can understand anything. I can get, well, not that I understand it, but I get closer to it. I see that Alana Whelm is on here, and I watched a video that she was in, where she really described why she was so invested in metastatic breast cancer research. And I've never forgotten it. And I know that these scientists frequently feel very personal about the research that they're doing. I hope that comes out today. But one of the other speakers, Peter Kuhn, I looked at his resume, and I can't wait to hear what he's talking about, because his background was very interesting. I don't know if you've looked at all of the different kinds of degrees that he has, and I wonder, well, what is he doing in metastatic breast cancer research? So I'm really curious about him also.
Yeah, it's very interesting. A lot of us that are doing, metastatic breast cancer research, our backgrounds are normally not in breast cancer or breast biology. Peter is his background. He's a physicist, and so that's the beauty of it. I mean, and the same goes with me. I'm a neuroscientist. I study the brain, and I always get this. Well, why are you studying? And it's sort of the concept of thinking outside the box, right? Concept, right? Where you bring in something from another field that will benefit this field of breast cancer.
Yeah.
And so Peter, through his background of engineering and physics, has been able to very successfully come up with tools and machines that will be able to pick out those cells that float in the body. And so that's why he's going to be talking about what's called liquid biopsy. So that's the fact. The great thing about science is, we bring in tools from other disciplines to study this disease.
Well, I was just, I was so excited to hear what they have to say, because their backgrounds are diverse, their studies are diverse, and it's all focused on the same problem, the same issue. But I'm so excited about this morning and this afternoon. And Linda, what do you think about Research Day? This has been, a while in coming. We're on the, what is it, the 26th or 27th day? I can't even remember. And we've been driving toward this big reveal, and I'm so excited. Tell me what you think about Research Day.
Well, what I think is, I think it's really interesting the way Dr. Neman has built the day. that he's started from the beginning, like what are the drivers of metastasis. And Dr. Welch is such a lovely human being, and he's so great at explaining his research and at explaining metastasis. And then Dr. Neman kind of is, building the building, and then really talking about information that's easily understood by patients, because patients really want to understand the background of metastasis, but they also want to know, well, what does that mean for me? So Dr. Neman, I was hoping you could maybe elaborate a bit on what you're hearing from the researchers who are speaking today in terms of what is most exciting that's moving from the lab to the clinic.
Yeah, sure. So it's exactly what you said. And as you were talking, it thought of, it's building up from going from, bottom to top, right? So literally going from the foot to the brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the most exciting things that are happening, and they're built within the talks, is like Alana Whelm, like you said, like that precision medicine, right? So how do we home, rather than, the conventional type of chemotherapy, which just does so much damage to the body, right? So that, and one of the other, Sharon, one of your other speakers, Susan Love, she and I, she was actually my mentor on my Komen grant, several years ago. She uses a word very frequently called collateral damage, right? So I'm not going to take, that's her, and that's one of the things that, we're excited about, is that trying to stop that collateral damage, right? And that comes with precision medicine, with targeted therapy. So meaning we're trying to only target the tumor cells and nothing else, right? So that a patient can one day in the near future could take, a chemo or a drug, and they'll just be like, fine, it's sort of like taking Tylenol, right? And you don't feel it. That's the ultimate goal, that we want, for patients, that they take it and they're like, okay, we're going to go through our day. That's one of the things that, we are excited, and we continue to be excited. And so the other thing is, and it goes with this precision medicine idea, right? Because everything is under that umbrella is this concept of immunotherapy that we hear more and more now, reawakening the body's immune system. And you say, well, why? It's because tumor cells have figured out a way to basically tell the immune system, which helps us fight off infection, COVID, right? They've turned that off. And they say, well, don't come and get me, because, I'm one of the good guys. And it's re-engaging the immune system. And Saul Priceman will talk about not only his research, but because he has a clinical trial going for HER2 positive breast to brain metastasis, at City of Hope. And this is taking something from the bench, which I was involved in his early studies of the preclinical, and now he's taken it to clinics, and they're starting to do this on patients. And Dr. Anders is going to talk about a couple of new clinical trials that they're actually in, I believe, phase 2 and 3, and they're showing promise. And not only that they're showing promise, she's going to talk about how potentially we're going to get an increase. We're having an increase in number of clinical trials for one of the hardest sites that was, that 5-10, I would even say less than 5 years ago, there were barely any clinical trials on, and that's for patients with brain metastasis.
Yeah. Right. Dr. Neman, could you talk a little bit about the, so you just talked about a clinical trial that's for HER2 brain metastasis. And as we know, there was a huge important study presented at San Antonio in December that also was HER2 to brain. Can you talk a little bit about this new development? And
Yes, sure. So the study that you're talking about, this is the HER2 CLIMB study, and that was a combination study, right? So of adding a couple of therapies that were already developed and bringing them together.
Got it.
The new one with Dr. Priceman is that it's what's specifically called CAR T therapy, and what that is CAR stands for chimeric antigen receptor, and all that means is we've taken our immune cells, the T cells, and now we've made them recognize the HER2 on the breast cancer cells. Okay, and so with Dr. Priceman's, it's actually patients will get inject. So what ends up happening is that physicians will take out their own T cells. They're naive, what we call quote unquote naive. Dr. Priceman and his group will re-engineer a patient's own T cells and make it recognize HER2 on breast cancers, and then they'll inject it back into the same patient. Okay, and then those T cells will now be what's called educated, and they'll go back and they'll go after those HER2 positive breast cancer cells.
Well, it's amazing. We're going to end just a little bit early today so that Josh can sign into the next Zoom meeting where he's going to be moderating and running and speaking also. And so we're going to stop in about 5 minutes, and then we're going to, everybody has to scramble to get onto that other Zoom call so that you can watch this program this morning. The Zoom link will remain the same all morning. You won't have to scramble around anymore, but we're going to stop at 5 minutes before the half hour. And I want to take this last 5 minutes and ask you, Josh, a little about yourself. Would you tell us a little about yourself? You've been associated and a supporter of Susan G. Komen for a long time, and we've appreciated the entree you've given us to the research world. So I want you to take now 4 minutes, because I took up one of them, and talk about yourself a little bit.
Yeah, sure. It's funny, Sharon, I can talk about everybody else, but it's always harder to talk about yourself. But the way I got involved, with Susan Komen was when I arrived at USC as an assistant professor in neurosurgery. And Susan Komen, I always say, they gave me my first real opportunity after my training of funding me to, as my lab was opening up, and they gave me a Career Catalyst Award. And this has just been my personality, honestly. I always want to give back, and it's paying it forward. And after, and that grant was, almost 6 years ago now. Afterwards, I wanted to continue with, the foundation and help out in any way. And then, I had patient advocates, on my my grant, and I bring patient advocates into my lab, as you know. And one of those patient advocates, introduced me, to you. And we had a coffee one morning, and then you and I, it was supposed to be about a half hour, I think, meeting turned out to be, I think, 2.5 hours, I think. And then I said that I want to help out with, the Komen community. And you said, well, why don't you come on to, the LA County, Susan Komen. And I did. And I came on, and I, part of their board of directors, and I helped. And I started, you went, and at this point you already had your City of Hope conference, right? And then I said, I would love to, help you out with this, and, have this science panel. And so, I think, the thing to know about me is that I love giving back, and paying it forward. And I think that's what I think the theme of this day is that, and I have to, it's funny. I always say, well, my mentality is we are researchers, but first and foremost, we're educators, and that's in the core of everything. Is we are trying to educate, whether it's educating people or educating cancers, our body to fight cancer, right? So that's the commonality.
That's wonderful, and it really epitomizes you, Josh. You've never said no. You've always been there, willing to help, and you've always been able to explain things to lay people in terms that they can understand. And I have to tell you, that's very comforting, because what you do is way beyond my ability to understand, but somehow, because you're able to describe it in simpler terms, I feel better. I feel better about it. It's not so mysterious when you're at the wheel with your metaphors. And I thank you so much. And Linda, I was so glad to see you this morning.
Thanks for inviting me. It's fun.
Yeah,
Well,
that's great.
heavens, I invite you the rest of the week because we have some powerful programming. I'm hoping that you're going to be here Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday because we have a lot of things that are going on that I want to share with everybody. But right now we have to let we have to let Josh go and start this amazing conference. And the rest of the listeners, I want you to click on the next Zoom link. And Darren, get it ready because here they come. And I want you to rise and shine today. And I really want you to watch what Josh has put together. And I want to say goodbye to Josh and goodbye to Linda. And I want to tell the audience, see you later. And remember, I love you.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Sharon. Bye, Dr.
Bye.
Neman.
Bye.